So I'm going to talk about eating well for kidney health. And so who is this presentation suitable for and why? So this webinar is for those that are living with a single kidney after kidney cancer and whose remaining kidney is working well. So that one kidney that you've got remaining is doing the job that it's meant to be doing. If you are struggling with your kidneys at the moment and it's not functioning properly, then or that remaining kidney is not functioning properly, then this might not be suitable for you. And you may need to seek individual support and advice for your diet. Okay, so why is diet important after kidney cancer? So that remaining kidney that you've got there is hopefully going to see you through for the rest of your life. And living with that one remaining kidney means that you really want to avoid any damage that could reduce the function of the kidney. And the sorts of things that can cause damage to the kidney are high blood pressure, or also known as hypertension, diabetes, both types, type 1 or type 2. There are other types, so any sort of types of diabetes can cause damage to the kidney. Heart disease, also known as cardiovascular disease, and that can include things like stroke as well as things like heart attacks, and being an unhealthy weight, so a BMI that is higher than a healthy BMI. So if anyone hasn't heard of the BMI before, the NHS website has a lovely calculator there, so you can work out whether or not you're a healthy BMI. BMI means body mass index, and it's a measurement of your weight in relation to your height. And there can be different ranges for different ages and different ethnicities. So it's worth going onto the NHS website and just checking that you are a healthy weight. So those things can put more pressure and mean that the kidney has to work a little bit harder, and that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to stress the kidney out. So the question is, what should we be eating after kidney cancer? Well, there is no specific renal kidney diet. It doesn't exist. There is no definition of what a kidney or renal diet is. There's no one single thing. And if you look online, you'll probably find there's a lot of confusing advice out there. And a lot of that is possibly quite outdated. I know when I've done a quick Google search just on what to eat for your kidneys, there'll be websites that say 5 foods you should never eat with kidney problems, or avoiding this certain group of foods is important, or cutting out these particular minerals are important, making these food swaps are important. And that's not necessarily the case. And then if you add cancer into the mix as well, and you do a Google search on cancer and health, I'm sure you're left with even more confusion. So the advice out there is quite confusing online, and so it's understandable that a lot of people might be following the wrong diet or excluding certain foods when they don't need to be. And that's the problem with a lot of the advice out there. It does exclude certain foods, and some of those foods are actually healthy. I've spent a lot of time talking to people who have changed their whole grain bread to white bread because that's the advice that was online, and actually that's really, really outdated advice. So those with a healthy kidney do not need to follow any sort of special diet or any renal diet. So if you're, like I've said at the beginning, if that single remaining kidney is working well and functioning properly, then there is no need for you to follow any specific special diet. The diet you want to be following is a healthy, well-balanced diet, and that should be low in salt. So there's a lot of people out there that don't really understand what a healthy, well-balanced diet should look like. And it's worth discussing, because I think that, again, if you Google it, there's an awful lot of conflicting and confusing information out there. So we're going to just talk through what that healthy, well-balanced diet should look like. So this is what we use as dietitians to explain what a healthy diet should look like. It's called the Eat Well Guide, and it shows the proportions of food groups that we need in order to have a well-balanced and healthy diet. And those proportions that are shown there, they represent foods that are eaten over a whole day, or even over a whole week. It's not necessarily what you have to have on your plate at every meal. This Eat Well Guide is available quite freely on NHS websites and government websites. So, and there's a booklet that you can download from the government website as well. But we're also going to make sure that this information is available on Kidney Cancer UK. It should hopefully be available within the next month or two, I would hope, Lucy. So watch this space. Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to break down each area and talk through, the foods that you want to be including in your diet. So my favorite area that I always start with is the green one, the fruits and vegetables. So we really want to be aiming for at least 5 portions of a variety of fruits and vegetables every day. You don't want the same, you want a variety, you want to mix it up, you want to be trying new things, and you at least want 5 portions a day. That's not 5 different types, that's 5 portions, and I'll talk more in a minute about what a portion looks like. And when I say at least 5, if you go for 7 or more, the benefits don't stop at 5, they continue on. So by getting more than 5 in a day, you're giving yourself more benefit, more health, if you like. So if we look at our diet as a whole, fruits and vegetables should really be making up just over 1/3 of our daily food intake. So the idea really is to try and include some at every meal, and where possible also with your snacks as well throughout the day. And choose a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. Different fruits, different vegetables have different types of fibre, different minerals and vitamins. So getting the variety in gives us a variety of those fibres, vitamins and minerals that are all good for our health. And of course, they contribute to our fibre intake. We should all be aiming for about 30 grams of fibre per day. So the more fruit and veg you have, the more fibre. We've got these wonderful little microbes that live in our gut, and they do an awful lot to look after our health, and their main fuel is fibre. So the more fibre we give them, the more those little microbes living in our gut help to look after our body. Now, there is one thing to be said that you might want to steer clear from, and that's star fruit, and that's because it can be toxic to the kidneys. So staying clear of star fruit. It's not one that we typically see in our diets anyway, so it's an easy one, hopefully, for most of you out there to stay away from. So I said that I'd talk about what a portion of fruit and veg looks like. So let's just look at that. So the portion is generally 80 grams. It's considered 80 grams. And I wouldn't advocate that you go and start weighing your fruits and vegetables every time you have them, but it's just to give you an idea of what that would look like. So a banana, an apple, a pear, an orange, they're all classed as one portion. 3 heaped tablespoons of vegetables is a portion of vegetables, and a dessert bowl of salad is a portion. So looking at those ones that I've described already, I always guide people on the size of the palm of your hand. So think about a portion of fruit or veg would fit into the size of the palm of your hand, and that would be 1 portion per day. There are a few caveats there. So dried fruit, because it's such a concentrated source of sugar, you should only ever use dried fruit as one of your portions. It can't count for more than 1, and you want to limit it to 30 grams. So that's a much smaller amount. So think about the little box size snack boxes of raisins, for example, that you might get, or just if you were having, say, something like dates, you might just want to have 1 or 2, 2 or 3, or something like dried apricots. Again, you might want to bet about 3 or 4 of those, but you wouldn't want a whole bag of them because of the concentrated source of sugar. The other caveat would be fruit juices and smoothies. So you can't get all 5 portions of your fruit and veg by drinking a carton of smoothie or a carton of juice. you really want to be limiting it to 150 mils a day, and that would count as one portion, and you wouldn't count more than one portion if you drank a whole carton. I hope that makes sense. So if you have a glass of fruit juice daily, that counts as your one portion. If you have 2 glasses of fruit juice, that unfortunately you've already got your one, and that's it. That's your quota for the day. Now you can choose from fresh fruit and veg, you can choose frozen, doesn't matter. So, you know, if cost is an issue and frozen vegetables can be a lot cheaper, then by all means go for frozen. Dried, as I've shown here, they also count, but again, only as one. And canned vegetables and fruit are also absolutely fine. Be careful of anything that's tinned in salt or sugar. And if it is tinned in salt or sugar, you know, get a good drain and a rinse first. But nowadays, a lot of vegetables are just tinned in water, so you can normally avoid the salt and the sugar anyway. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to the next food group, which is the other big food group, and that's our starchy carbohydrates. So I think carbohydrates have had a bit of a bad rep over the years, but they are a healthy source of food. So things like potatoes, bread, rice, pasta, other starchy foods like couscous, getting a lot of grains in the supermarkets now, things like quinoa and barley, you know, those sorts of things, they all count. They're a source of energy. It's what gives us our energy every day. So they're really important. And as you can see, they also make up 1/3 of our diet. So if you think about your plate should be 1/3 fruit and vegetables and 1/3 starchy carbohydrates. Now the one caveat here is, again, you really want to be going for the high fiber variety. So that's things like wholemeal breads rather than the white breads, going for the skin on potatoes because that's where the fiber is. So you want to be enjoying that skin on things like new potatoes, jacket potatoes, homemade wedges, sweet potatoes. You want to be going for things like whole wheat pasta, brown rice, and then when it comes to things like breakfast cereals, really going for whole grain breakfast cereals, things like we've got an example here of Weetabix, if you can see on the picture here. That's a whole grain. So think brown rather than white or beige. Things like porridge oats, they're a wonderful whole grain. They've had very minimal processing done to them. There's no sugar added to them and there's no salt added to them. So when you're choosing this group of foods, you really want to be going for ones that are low in fat, low in salt and low in sugar. And really want to be going for the ones that are high in fiber. If it's not always possible, then that's fine. But the majority of the time, if you can, go for those high fiber options. Okay, so moving on to the next food group, it's your beans, pulses, fish, eggs, meat, and other proteins. So this is your protein food group. And protein is a slightly smaller group. And you do want some protein in the day because it's useful for things like maintaining our muscles. It helps to build new cells in the body. It helps with recovery and repair in the body. And provides some minerals and vitamins as well. So all of these foods, beans, pulses, fish, eggs, meat, and other proteins, these are good sources of protein and they provide the vitamins, minerals, and in particular pulses such as beans, peas, lentils. So when I'm talking about beans, I'm talking about kidney beans, cantellini beans, butter beans, kidney beans, all of those beans. They're all good sources of fiber and they're a great alternative to meat because they're much lower in fat and much higher in fiber. If you think about a piece of chicken, beef, pork, or some fish or some eggs, those foods are high in protein, but they contain absolutely no fiber. Whereas these foods, the beans, pulses, lentils, they are much higher in fiber, plus they contain the protein as well. So they're a really good alternative to meat. That's not to say that you need to become vegetarian. However, they're really good to incorporate as part of a meat dish or, you know, on their own as well, such as things like a bean burger rather than a beef burger, for example. And then moving on, you do want to include some fish in the diet, and this is really to try and get the omega-3. So aim for 2 portions of fish every week, and the omega-3 will be in the oily ones. Now, omega-3 is an essential fat that the body needs, and it's a very anti-inflammatory, so it reduces inflammation in the body. And as we know, cancer is an inflammatory condition, as is things like diabetes, heart disease, all these conditions that we want to try and avoid. So aiming for some oily fish in the diet, such as salmon or mackerel. Now, for any vegetarians out there, you do want to look at alternative sources to omega-3. So things like linseed or hemp seeds are good alternatives. And I'll think of the other one in a minute, and when I remember it, I'll come back to it. But hemp seeds and linseeds are definitely good. Oh, and quinoa, which is actually a grain, but it's high in protein and it's high in omega-3. But those ones are good alternatives to your fish, and you would want to make sure you get maybe a tablespoon per day of seeds to make up for the fact that you're not eating fish. Okay, so moving on, you know, meat's still included within this section, but you do want to think about the type of meat that you're having. So go for lean cuts of meat and lean mince, so less than 5% of fat. And where meat does have any fat on it, you really want to avoid eating that. So cutting the fat off and removing the skin from chicken. That's because those foods are high in what's known as saturated fat, and saturated fat can cause problems such as high cholesterol, which can lead to heart disease, which, as we know, can have an effect on your kidney health. And then finally, we do know that we should all be lowering our intake of red meat and processed meat. And this came about because the World Health Organization said that it was linked to the development of gastric cancers, so bowel cancers. So if you are eating red meat or processed meat, so processed meats, things like sausages, bacons, pastrami's, corned beef, anything that's gone through a process, whether it's salting or fermenting, then those foods you should try and cut down to no more than 70 grams per day. So that's inclusive of red meat and processed meat. You don't want any more than 70 grams per day. So you really don't want a corned beef sandwich at lunchtime and then a steak at dinner time. That's going to be well over your 70 grams per day. So you want to be thinking about cutting back if you're having more than 90 grams of red or processed meat per day. Okay. So moving on to the dairy or dairy alternatives, you do need to have some dairy or dairy alternatives. So when I talk about dairy alternatives, we're talking about things like soy milk or yogurts, and that can include things like oat milk or almond milk, or all the other varieties of milks that are on the market now. They all have, they can all be classed as a source of dairy as well. They normally have added calcium in them, and that's really why dairy is here, because we want to get a little bit of calcium to help support our bone health. So ideally, again, just with the meat section, you want to go for lower fat and lower sugar options. So this is because dairy is generally high in saturated fat, which, as we know, can have a problem, cause problems for heart disease. So keeping saturated fat to on the lower side is helpful. So that's where you want to go for the lower fat options. So that's things like 1% milk, semi-skimmed, skimmed milk, and then the no added sugar, or even looking at things like the plain yogurts and flavoring them yourself with fresh fruit. And then things like milk, cheese, yogurts, fromage frais, that's all good sources of protein and vitamins, and of course calcium. And then when you're going for the things like oat, almond, soya milk, you want to make sure that they're fortified. So just as an add-on thing there, the organic varieties of plant milks aren't fortified with calcium. or vitamin D. So if you are choosing an organic variety of plant milk, think about where you're going to be getting your calcium from to ensure that there's other sources going in. So for example, things like sesame seeds are a good source, green leafy vegetables, your beans, your pulses, and some of your nuts as well are good sources of calcium. So just ensure that you're getting a source of calcium if you're not having dairy. Okay, so moving on. Fats and oils. So again, just coming back to that saturated fat, ensure you choose an unsaturated fat oil and spread, and just use it in small amounts. So fat is fat, whether it's friendly fat or known as good fat or healthy fats or the bad fats. So there are the animal fats, which are generally saturated fats. That's where you might find it in your dairy and your fatty meats. And then, of course, things like butter or lard would have it. And then you've got your healthier fats, which are things like your rapeseed oil, olive oil, and sunflower oil, which we would advocate you going for. However, you still want to use them in a small amount. So regardless of whether it's a healthy fat or a less healthy fat, they contain the same number of calories and will contribute to any weight gain or unnecessary weight gain that you may not want. Okay. So as part of the Eat Well guide, it also talks about fluid. And I think fluid's a really important one to mention. So you do want to drink enough fluid, and the government recommendation is 6 to 8 cups or glasses a day. And that's for the general population. And if you've been advised by a health professional to drink a different amount, then of course you need to follow that. I think it's important that you drink enough to stay hydrated. The amount of fluid you need as a person will depend on your day-to-day activities or how sweaty you are, what the temperature is. Some people I see drink excessive amounts, thinking that they're going to be flushing out their kidneys and doing them some good. So you really don't need to be doing that. You basically just want enough to keep your urine a pale straw colour, and that would be adequate. So if you're drinking plenty or excessive amounts, and you've got that very clear urine, you might just be having too much, and that's just putting extra pressure on that kidney. It just means that they have to work a little bit harder. In terms of what to drink, I mean, water is always going to be the best option. There's things like low-fat milks, low sugar or sugar-free drinks. Things like tea and coffee, that all counts towards your fluid intake. I would be a little bit careful when it comes to things like tea and coffee, and perhaps be cautious of how much caffeine you're having. So the advice is to keep caffeine to less than 300 milligrams a day. Or you could consider a decaffeinated coffee or tea, or even like a herbal tea would be absolutely fine. So in terms of how much 300 milligrams of caffeine is per day, it's about 4 or 5 cups of tea, depends how strong you have it, and about 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day. And then, of course, you could have your caffeinated one in the morning and perhaps switch to a decaffeinated later in the day. It's entirely down to you, but you want to keep your caffeine intake around 300 milligrams. And again, you know, when the guidance, when all of this information becomes available online, that guidance will be part of that as well. Fruit juices and smoothies also count towards your fluid consumption, but as I've already alluded to, the limit for fruit juices is 150 mils per day. Not that doesn't count more to your fluid if you drink more, but it will only ever count to one of your portions of fruit and veg. Okay. So what about all those lovely foods out there that we all enjoy occasionally? Well, of course, you can still eat them. Foods, you can eat the high fat, high salt and high sugar foods. You just don't want to be having them that often. So enjoy them, but just have them in small amounts and less frequently. So this is things like your chocolates, cakes, biscuits, sugary drinks, butter, ghee, ice cream. Yeah, we all enjoy those foods. They're part of what gives us pleasure when we're eating, and it's part of maybe a social occasion. So it's not to say you can never ever have those foods again. That's all part of the balance, and getting a healthy balance in your diet is to still be able to include some of these foods. So yeah, do still enjoy them from time to time. Okay, so just to summarize there, we've talked about eating 5 or more fruit and veg every day. Getting a good variety in is important. Basing your meals on potatoes, bread, rice, pasta, and other starchy carbohydrates, and going for the whole grain varieties. Having some dairy or dairy alternatives to get your calcium in, but going for the low fat, low sugar options. Eating some beans, pulses, fish, eggs, lean meat, and other proteins, but limiting those red and processed meats. And choosing unsaturated oils and spreads, but only eating those in small amounts. So that's things like your rapeseed oil or your olive oil based spreads. Drinking enough fluids a day, whatever is advised by your healthcare professional, or just so that your urine is that pale straw colour, not excessive amounts, and not dehydrating yourself either. Okay. So that's the Eat Well guide, but there are a few additional bits that it's worth being aware of when you have a single kidney. So salt, we all know that as a general population, we should be eating less salt because it's has an effect on our blood pressure. It can have an effect on heart disease and stroke. After you've had kidney cancer, of course, eating less salt becomes even more important because you want to look after that remaining kidney. And that remaining kidney does a lot of work around balancing your blood pressure. So where does salt come from? So salt is naturally present in many foods. So even your fruits and vegetables will have a small amount of naturally present salt. So if you think about, oh, I need some salt, it will be naturally present in some of your foods anyway. And then, of course, it's the salt we add to food. So at the table or when we're cooking. And then there's the salt that's added during the processing of food. So when cereals are manufactured or breads are made, cheese is very salty, hams or other foods, they are the main sources of salt in our diet. In fact, it's about 75% of the salt in our diet comes from foods where it's already been added. Now, the amount of salt that's recommended is 5 grams or less per day, which is about a teaspoon of salt. We don't actually need 5 grams a day, but that's what we should try and limit our salt intake to. So how do we do that? Okay, so the most obvious would be limiting processed foods, convenience or takeaway foods, because of course that's where it's been added the most. So that's not to say you can never have those things, but you do want to reduce them or limit them, and try cooking most of your meals from scratch wherever possible, because you're in the ultimate control. Limiting salty foods such as crisps, ready-made cooking sauces, any sort of condiments that are salty, things like smoked foods, like smoked fish, for example, or processed meats, hard cheeses, pickled or salted nuts. They're all going to be very, very salty foods. And again, it's not to say you can't have them, it's that word limit. You just don't want to be having them in huge amounts. Reduce or avoid adding salt to your home cooking or at the table. And this includes all types of salt. So whether it's pink salt, garlic salt, kosher salt, rock salt, sea salt, it's salt and it has the same effect on the body. So you really want to be thinking about avoiding adding salt altogether. And where recipes call for things like stocks or gravies or sauces, you can use the low salt, reduced salt alternatives. So it's amazing now in the supermarkets, you can get very low salt stock cubes or even 0 salt stock cubes I've seen as well. You can get reduced salt condiments and sauces and gravy powders. So these things are available. You just might have to look a little bit harder to find them. Flavor foods using a variety of spices and herbs. So try and avoid getting your flavor through the salt and use the variety of herbs, and that can be dried herbs or fresh herbs. It really doesn't matter. Lemon or lime juice is great for adding a little bit of flavor at the end of cooking. Ginger, garlic, your vinegars in a small amount can be great for adding flavor to cooking. You really want to be careful with things like the seasoning mixes because they can contain a lot of salt. So you might see seasoning mixes for things like cottage pies or fajitas and things like that, whereas you can buy the spices and the herbs for those in the supermarkets and use those instead of the seasoning mixes. Give your taste buds a bit of time to adapt. You will find that in about 4 to 6 weeks, by reducing your salt, you will get used to it. A few resources here that you might find helpful to get through the changes with salt. There's a great app called Food Switch. It's completely free. It's created by Action on Salt. And you can use the barcode scanner on the app, and it will scan the food, and it will tell you a low salt or low sugar or low fat alternative. So worth looking at that one. And then this one, food portions and labels, that's available from the British Heart Foundation. It's a downloadable leaflet, and on page 13 there's this cutout, and it helps you to identify what's low, moderate and high in salt when you're looking at the nutritional information on the back of packaging. So everything on the back of packaging, it has a measurement per 100 grams, and it will tell you if it's got 0.3 grams of salt, and you can check that and you can see, well, that's low in salt, so I'm good to go. Okay. So another common question that I get asked is alcohol. How much alcohol can I drink? So there's no specific rule for having one kidney with regards to alcohol. The same guidance applies to you as it does to the general population, and that is 14 units per week. But it's bearing in mind that there is no safe level of alcohol drinking. It doesn't exist. If you do decide you want to drink, then the guidance of 14 units is to keep your health risk at a low level. And you really want to spread those 14 units across a week. You don't want to save them up all for a weekend or a big night out or a big bash. So 14 units per week spread across multiple days throughout the week is the safest level of drinking. But it's remembering there is no safe level. That is just the safest level. Okay, but what does a unit look like? So it's not one drink equals 1 unit. So a pint of beer is generally, well, you get about six pints for 14 units, so it's just over 2 units, and that's based on a 4% volume. So the higher the percentage, the more units that are going to be in that beer. Again, for the wine, the higher the percentage, you've got 6 glasses of wine there. That's a 13.5% glass of wine, and that's a 175. If you then drink a 250 ml glass, which is generally a large glass of wine in most bars, then that would have more units in it. And then with a shot, a single shot is a single unit. And so that's where the rule does apply. 1 drink equals 1 unit. So you've got 1 shot of a spirit, such as gin, at 40% volume, then that would count as 1 unit of your 14 a week. Okay. So moving on to some very specific kidney things that you might have found online. You may have seen advice to reduce potassium, perhaps. So you're probably wondering, well, what about potassium at the moment? So let's just explain what potassium is. It's a mineral. It's present in many foods. It's also an additive, and it's added to some foods as well. We do need potassium. It's important. It helps with normal function, and it's actually very protective. In a healthy kidney function, any excess potassium that comes in through the diet is then filtered out of the body through the urine. Sometimes when your kidney function isn't working properly, then that filtering system doesn't work, and potassium levels can build up in the blood. And that's where people need to reduce the amount of potassium they eat in their diet, because it can affect the heart. So it's important to be aware that it's very unlikely that if your remaining kidney is working well, it is very unlikely that you would need to follow or eat a diet that is low in potassium. And it's also really, really important to say there is absolutely no benefit to following a low potassium diet if you do not need to. It doesn't preserve your kidneys in any way whatsoever. So following a low potassium diet is not essential. I think that's probably, there may be some questions on that later, but let's move on. A couple more slides and then we'll move to some questions. So the other thing that you might have come across when you were looking online was phosphate. So you might have read that phosphate's important to reduce as well. So phosphate, again, is a mineral just like potassium, and it's present in a lot of protein foods like meat and dairy and beans and pulses, but it's also in whole grain foods as well. And it's also an additive, so it's added to many processed foods. In the body, it works with calcium and it helps to keep our bones nice and healthy and strong. So again, when your kidney function is healthy, any excess phosphate that you eat, it's filtered out of the body through urine, the kidneys. So if the kidneys are working properly, it's doing its job properly. If you've got high levels of phosphate in your blood, and that's when that would happen if your kidneys aren't working properly, then some people would need to follow a low phosphate diet. If your kidney's working well, then it's very unlikely that you will need to eat a low phosphate diet. So please do not, you have to follow any phosphate restrictions if your kidney function is working well. Okay, so just to summarize all of that, you can eat a well-balanced, healthy diet following the Eat Well guide that we've discussed here this evening. Where possible, cook from scratch and limit processed foods or convenience foods, because that helps with lowering the amount of salt in the diet. And avoid adding salt at the table and in cooking, and read labels to limit high salt foods. And only follow a low potassium or low phosphate diet if you've been advised to by a health professional. And if that is the case, then you should seek support from a dietitian to ensure that the diet is healthy and well balanced. Okay, so that brings me to the end of the presentation, and I'm going to hand back to Lucy, and I'm hopeful that there's some questions for me to answer.
There's questions everywhere now, Angelina, so I'm just going to start.
I can't see the chat, Lucy.
So the first question is, thank you for your presentation. I have both kidneys.
Okay.
Is this all still suitable for me?
Absolutely, even more so. If you have both kidneys and the kidneys are working well, so that means this individual had some kidney cancer but was able to keep hold of their kidneys.
Yeah, they may have.
Yeah, I mean, a healthy, balanced diet is what we should all be following, because it's not just about looking after your kidneys. You're looking after your heart. You know, you're looking after your lungs, your entire body. It works for everything. So a healthy, balanced diet isn't just about, it's not the diet for your kidneys, it's the diet for your entire body. So of course it's entirely suitable.
Thank you very much. The next question, is there a limit on eggs, the amount of eggs I can eat?
Yeah, so there isn't necessarily a limit on the amount of eggs you can eat. I mean, I think there was always half a dozen a week banded around for a while. You probably don't want to eat excessive amounts. They are high in cholesterol, and it's good to get a variety of different proteins from different sources. So eggs are a protein food, so you know, break it up with some fish or some beans, some pulses, lentils, some lean meats. So I mean, it might be worth just sticking to about half a dozen a week, but you know, if one week you go over slightly, then that's okay.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. The next question is, what about vegans? Is there any specific do's and don'ts that I should do as a vegan?
No, so obviously majority of that all applies. So you've got your fruits and veg, you've got your starchy foods, they're all going to be naturally vegan, and it's really looking at making sure when it comes to the protein foods, you're substituting what you would have had in terms of meat, fish, eggs and dairy with alternatives. So beans, pulses, lentils, tofu, soy, corn, some of it's vegan, some of it's not, and then a dairy alternative, ideally if it's fortified with calcium and vitamin D. So it's just making sure you're replacing it like for like. The Vegan Society have the exact same Eat Well guide, but they have it just for vegan foods. So it's worth heading over to the Vegan Society. They also tell you on the Vegan Society which supplements you may want to consider, or how you ensure you get certain nutrients in your diet to make sure that anything that you're likely not to get from your vegan foods, because you're omitting meat from or dairy or eggs and fish from your diet. So things like B12, zinc, and vitamin D. So it goes into all of those vitamins and minerals. But go to the Vegan Society website, look at their Eat Well guide, and it will detail everything that you need to cover.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We've got a question from, I think, Judith. Would you like to ask a question? Hi, Judith.
Hi.
I got osteoarthritis of both my knees.
Okay.
And obviously I can't use any anti-inflammatories because they say that's not good for my kidney.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned turmeric.
Okay.
But I've also been told that's not good for kidney function either. And I'm just wondering, is there anything I can use that would help?
Is that like a turmeric supplement?
Either a supplement. I've you know, you can have it in a curry and things.
Yeah.
But I just wondered, is a supplement okay for it?
I don't think it would be. No, I would not, from the point of view of maybe it's just that there's not enough evidence for it, and it's just the safety of it as well, because it's not well regulated, the supplement industry, and so you run the risk of having quite high doses, or you don't always know exactly what's in the supplement and to what dose you're having. I don't see a problem with you adding turmeric to a curry, by all means. You know, get the powder, because I don't think you can overdose on that when you're
that's what I've been using.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you can suggest?
Are you having plenty of omega-3? Yeah, so you're getting your oily fish.
Yeah, well, I probably could eat a bit more of it, to be honest. So I'll try that.
Yeah, and limiting your salt as well.
Yeah, I've cut right down on salt.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, those would be the main, because they're, you know, that's anti-inflammatory. Plenty of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And whole grains.
Cereals and beans.
Yeah. I would steer clear of the supplement side of things, just because it's not well regulated and you really don't know what you're getting.
Lovely. And can I ask you something else as well?
Okay.
I was diagnosed with diverticulitis at the same time they found my kidney cancer.
Oh, right.
And so I find it quite difficult sometimes to eat high fiber stuff and lots of fruit and veg. Yeah. Because it affects me another way.
Yeah. So when you get a flare-up of diverticulitis, you really want to stay quite low fibre, unfortunately, while the flare-up resolves. And then once it's resolved, return to a high fibre diet. And the high fibre diet should hopefully prevent future flare-ups.
Lovely.
So but think about still getting your fruits and vegetables, but think about the types of root vegetables are probably easier on the stomach, and think about how you can cook them so that they're really soft and even sort of to the point where they might be blended. So if you wanted to get plenty of vegetables in, think about having more soups where you can cook them down and then blend them. So, and even the same with the lentils, you can do that.
I always put lentils in my soup anyway.
Yeah, and blending them down, and that will be a little bit more gentle on the stomach rather than the harsh fibrous things that you have to first chew, and then of course your digestive system has to do the rest of the work.
Right.
So, think about boiling them down so that they're really soft and then blending.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Angelina. I'll go back to our list if that's all right. This question I can kind of answer actually. Will the slides be available on the Kidney Cancer UK website? This video will be on the website, and as Angelina's already mentioned, she's very kindly written it up, lots of information on dietary anyway, so that will come through as well, hopefully by like this next month.
So the dietary information is just in the process of going through the renal nutrition group, which is part of the British Dietetic Association, which is my professional body. And then they're going to rubber stamp the information just to make sure that they're happy with it, and then it will go onto the website.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm so excited. It's taken about 2 years to get this done, so I'm so excited, Angelina, that I found you. I really am. The next question. Thank you for your presentation. If you follow the dietary advice and exercise on a regular basis, is it possible to increase your kidney function score?
It depends. So it depends how far out from your cancer you are, if you're still having treatment, because of course treatment can put a bit of pressure on the kidneys as well. So if that treatment has stopped and you're eating well and you get to a healthy weight, you might see a small improvement in your kidney function, but it might just be that that's your kidney function and you just want to keep it where it is, maintain it. It's very individual, Lucy, and it would be really hard to comment on that. Yeah, it's not impossible, but it may improve a little bit, but it wouldn't go back necessarily to what it would be if you had 2 kidneys still.
Thank you. The next question: since having my nephrectomy, I've had 2 bouts of gout. Any advice regarding foods to avoid for gout? Right.
Okay. So the Gout Society has a wonderful leaflet on there, worth having a look. Some of the main things is to make sure you're drinking so you're not getting too dehydrated, cutting down on salt and sugar, getting to a healthy weight. So if you're overweight at the moment, trying to get down to a healthy weight, and being careful with animal foods actually. So if you're eating a lot of meat, that can cause problems. And there are just a few selections of fruits and vegetables as well. But if you go onto the Gout Society website, they've got a wonderful PDF that you can download. So Gout Society, and I think it's just called Dietary Information. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question, Jennifer, I think you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask a question? Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, yes, I would. Thank you. Hi, thank you. It's been really good. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, great. Yeah.
Right. So thank you very much for this webinar. It's really good. Just wanted to ask actually 3 questions. I'm being a bit greedy. First one is, I had high blood pressure and I was on medication way before I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. And over the years, I've been on the tablets, and everything has been stable. But recently, my readings have been kind of high. So I'm being monitored by my GP. But obviously, I don't want it to change. I just want it to be stable as it was before. I don't think that my diet has changed, because I do have allergies to food and everything, and I do eat healthy and I do cook my foods and everything. What can I do I don't know what would be the best thing to do to sort of make sure that the blood pressure is lowered, because I don't use salt in my cooking. All the things that you sort of suggested or you mentioned, I do. Sometimes I might use a stock, but, everything is more or less salt-free, unless it's enhanced by some of the ingredients that I use. But I am a bit concerned about my blood pressure reading. I can't remember what it is right now, but it's like, what can I do further to lower it so that I don't have to go on another set of tablets or anything?
Sounds really frustrating, Jennifer, because it sounds like you're already doing so many things and that you're on top of things. So you mentioned that you use stock. Have a look at the things like the zero salt stock. So Knorr is the brand.
Okay.
Knorr, they're the brand that do the zero salt. So just to help lower your salt a little bit more. The other brand, which is very low salt, is Callow, Kall.
Yeah, that's the one I use.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So,
okay. Unless I sort of get away from, or maybe just not use it at all, to be honest with you. But you just want sort of flavourings for your gravies and your sauces.
And it's important that you still enjoy your food, Jennifer. So you want to get that flavour as well. Are you eating plenty of fruits and vegetables?
I eat a lot of vegetables. Fruit at the moment, I have to say I am struggling, because I would say that I'm not eating as much fruit as I usually do. So that might be one of the things actually now thinking seems to be a problem. But I might, before I'd have my apples and, blueberries and raspberries, and I've got the fruit in the fridge, but I find I'm not eating it and then I'm throwing it away. And I don't like smoothies either.
So we know that fruit is very good at, fruit and vegetables are helpful at lowering blood pressure. It's actually the potassium content of the fruits and vegetables that helps with blood pressure control. So it might be worth keeping like a diary for a week and just having a look over it for a week and saying, right, well, am I truly getting my 5 a day? And was there any scope for me to lower the salt any further in my diet?
Right.
I mean, it sounds like you're doing so much already.
Oh gosh, I am. Because like I said, I have got a lot of allergies. So, there's been a lot of things that I've cut out of my diet for many years. So that's going on to, you were talking about the omega-3. Now, I'm allergic to fish and seafood. So I've been, with my cereals, I've been adding flaxseed, those mixes, or chia seeds. Is there any
chia
other
seeds
thing?
is the other one that I couldn't think of.
Oh, was it?
Thank you, Jennifer.
That's okay. So is there any other thing that I could use? Is that, because I find, it's just in my cereal that I will have in the morning, but I don't tend to, would that be enough?
Yeah, so a tablespoon, 1 to 2 tablespoons of chia, flax or hemp seeds per day should be fine for getting your omega-3 in. If you are concerned, you could always opt for a supplement, something with some EPA and DHA is what you want.
EPA
and DHA.
Okay, okay.
So if you want more information on omega-3, you can go to the British Dietetic Association and on their food facts part, and they've got a whole fact sheet on omega-3, and it will also tell you about what level of EPA and DHA you want to be looking for in a supplement.
Okay, and just one more question.
No, they're good questions.
You always hear about, the gut and probiotics and things like that. And one of my friends mentioned to me, oh, do you take anything for it, like the tablets? I mean, she mentioned some tablets. But I did recently find this yogurt where it's a gut yogurt and it is dairy free. So occasionally I would drink that. But is it something that you think we should be mindful of as well with the whole?
I think we should all be mindful of our gut for sure. I think our gut bacteria have a huge role, and we're only really learning more about that now. So the gut bacteria, they feed on fiber. So the higher the fiber in your diet, the more they grow and look after your body. So going for things like your fruits and vegetables that have a variety of fiber, going for your whole grain foods like your potatoes with the skins, the high fiber breads, high fiber cereals, things like brown rice and quinoa and the various high fiber grains that are available. Those fibers all help to feed your gut bacteria. And then of course, when we're talking about protein foods, I've mentioned more beans, pulses and lentils because they are wrapped up in fiber. And of course your meat, your fish, your dairy doesn't have that fiber within it. So making sure you're getting plenty of fiber, it's the fuel for our bacteria. And there's no harm in taking a probiotic. There are so many different ones on the market, and it would depend on an individual. Well, you could certainly go for the foods that you're talking about. So is that like a kefir?
Yes.
Kefir yogurt.
Yes.
By all means, have that with your cereals and your seeds and berries for breakfast. Kefir yogurt is a good option. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Pleasure, Jennifer.
Take care, Jennifer.
Thank you.
See you later. The next question is, what is classed as a healthy kidney?
Oh, okay. What's classed as a healthy kidney? So is your kidney functioning well and filtering all the waste products from your body, basically? So if you're getting blood results that are indicating that it's not doing its job properly, then that's when you might need more individualized advice. But if your blood results show that your kidneys are working well and they're filtering out the waste products, so our body over the course of the day, through general metabolism, breathing in and out, heart beating, maintaining our muscles, and also dealing with all the food and drink that we give it, our kidneys have to deal with the waste products that produces. And so if those waste products aren't being filtered by the kidneys, they start to build up in the blood. And so we see that in blood results. So if those waste products are being seen in blood results, then perhaps your kidneys aren't working well. But if you're not seeing that in the blood results, then that would indicate that your kidneys are working.
That was a great answer. Thank you for explaining that. The next question, given the latest research linking blood group to stroke risk and other research linking blood group to cancer risk, do you think, that's a long question, do you think there is any link between the blood group and food requirements, as disease is a disease? Yes.
And what, sorry?
As disease is us at disease. Not quite sure.
So there is, there always has been for a long time, the blood group diet.
Yes.
Yes, and I wonder if that's what they're alluding to there.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I should
yeah.
imagine, because there isn't enough evidence for it at the moment, and I should imagine even though there may be some recent research, it's probably not significant enough to make any changes or to make any recommendations to eat a specific blood group diet at this stage. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm not familiar with the actual research, but it certainly hasn't changed any guidance.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you say more about how much you can safely have in a day in terms of treats? Also, I'm diabetic caused by my immunotherapy.
Oh, okay. So there isn't any guidance in terms of what you can safely have in terms of treats. I suppose it depends on how much other sugary things you might have had throughout the day, really. So this individual is diabetic, or has diabetes, sorry, and
type 1, yeah.
Yeah, and wants to, I mean, I think the important thing is when you have diabetes is maintaining really a tight blood sugar control. So if you are going to incorporate some of those treat foods into your diet on a daily basis, then it's ensuring that your medication or anything that you take negates that, so you don't have these big peaks in your blood sugar. Yeah. So it's working really closely with your diabetes team to ensure that it allows you to have those treats. I think it also, when you talk about how much can you safely have in the diet, it depends how much you're having at the moment. If you're having a lot, then you might want to consider cutting down. If you're having...
Sorry, go on, sorry.
If you're having a sugary breakfast cereal and chocolate or crisps at lunch and then a pudding after dinner, that's probably a bit too much, isn't it? So you might want to think about cutting down to just once a day. And if it's something that you do have once a day, then you might want to think about, well, do I need it once a day? Perhaps I could have it every other day. It's just about what's going to maintain your individual health. But certainly when it comes to diabetes, if you're incorporating those sorts of foods into your diet, you just want to make sure your medication is covering it so that your diabetes is well controlled.
And is there any truth in it's better to eat dark chocolate rather than milk chocolate?
Yeah, I mean, the dark chocolate certainly has less sugar in it. Yeah, and it contains something called polyphenols, which are there's another big word called, they're antioxidants. So they're the sorts of things that can help the body reduce anything like inflammation in the body. So inflammation, cancer is inflammation, diabetes is an inflammatory thing, heart disease is an inflammatory thing. What you do need to be mindful of is not eating a whole bar of dark chocolate, just a small amount of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Will this diet, sorry, next question, will this diet help with my kidney stones?
So there are different types of kidney stones, that's the thing. So it really depends on the type of kidney stone. So it's important to know which type of kidney stone you have. I would certainly say drinking plenty of fluid, so that your urine runs pale straw colour can help. Reducing the salt and the sugar can help. And in some cases, reducing animal products can help with kidney stones as well. So certainly, but there are different types of kidney stones. And so
yeah, sorry, I know I'm interrupting you and I apologise. It's
okay.
Potassium stone.
Oh, so potassium citrate stones.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It says in chat.
Okay, so yes, by all means it could help. So certainly drinking plenty so that your urine runs like a nice pale straw colour, keeping the sugar and the salt down, and perhaps limiting animal products can help. I'm going to have a look for some good literature for you, because I feel like I've directed people to really good, reliable websites, but there should be some reliable kidney stone information out there, and I'll find out for that for you, Lucy, so that you can send that information on to that person. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I've got your name, that person, so I can.
Yeah, I know that, you know, in my environment we do have some information that we send out to our patients, but whether or not that's available online, I'm not sure. If it is, then I'll put a link to it so that you can use it.
Lovely, thank you. I've literally written down that the person's name as well, so I can forward on that information. Okay, thank you. Got a couple more questions. Does sugar feed cancer?
Okay, so I think that the jury's probably still out. Yeah, there was a large study recently which showed some weak association with increased cancer risk and sweetener consumption. So artificial sweetener consumption. So it was a very large study, and it did have some weak association with things like aspartame, sucralose, aspartame K. It didn't suggest, the suggestion out of that study didn't suggest switching back to sugar. So it wasn't sweeteners are no good, go back to sugar, that's better for you. I think the takeaway message is probably to try and reduce your overall intake of sugar or sweeteners. So to try and reduce that need or that desire for sweet things, and just have them less often and in a small amount. Yeah, the advice from, you know, in terms of regulators, they haven't changed the advice based on that study, but just I thought it would be interesting maybe to some of the people listening this evening.
Brilliant, thank you. And the next question, I have mostly oat cereals like porridge and oat granola, and was recently told it's high in sugar. Is this correct? As I have always read oats are good.
So oats, just plain oats, there's nothing added to them. So if you buy a bag of oats, which are very cheap, and make your porridge or your overnight oats, there's no salt added to it, there's no sugar added to them. So I think they're a fantastic start to the day. When you go to oat cereal, there's a variety of oat cereals out there. So you can get things like Oaty Bix or oat puffs. And then, of course, you've got oat-based granolas. Now, if they've been processed a little bit more, so they will have some added sugar and they will have some added salt. And just going back to that slide where I talked about some of the resources that are available out there, looking at the British Heart Foundation website, although this will be available on Kidney Cancer UK when we've got the literature up and running, But in the meantime, going to the British Heart Foundation website and looking at their food portions and labels leaflet that's downloadable, you can check your cereals to see if they're high in sugar. So anything that's greater than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams is moderate. And then I think if you get to somewhere about 20 grams of sugar per 100 grams, that would be high. So if it's less than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams, it's low.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. And I think the last question for now, I have to say, I haven't told you this, but going throughout this, you've had so many lovely positive comments about thanking you and how informative it is. But obviously, you can't see those. So,
oh, well, thank you. That's very
kind.
kind.
You've had some really lovely comments. Before kidney surgery, should you change your diet and maybe reduce anything?
So I think before kidney surgery, it's important that you're about to embark on surgery and potentially about to embark on some intensive treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay to change your diet and go to a healthier diet, because that's going to help you get through. But what you don't want to be doing is being too restrictive with things. So I'm aware of some people that barely eat through the day, have cut out all sugar, all fat, basically live on fruits and vegetables, which isn't ideal. You do need to be strong for the surgery. That's number one. And you do need to be strong for any treatment that you have after the surgery. So what you need to be careful of is that you're not losing huge amounts of muscle and you're not losing huge amounts of weight that take you. Sensible weight loss, if you're trying to lose weight, is 1 to 2 pounds per week. If you're losing more than that, then you're potentially losing a lot of muscle. So it's okay to switch your diet to something healthy, but not to the point where you're being overly restrictive and you're losing muscle and significant amounts of weight. I hope I've answered that okay, Lucy. So I think that's a really important
yeah, I
thing.
think it's a really good question to finish actually as well. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And if that was it, yeah, thank you so much